Bob Smerbeck, senior meteorologist with AccuWeather here with us this week. Hopefully he has some better news than what we have out there today. It's not very nice.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me here for the Ken Reeves Memorial map discussion. Ken he played a big role in keeping AccuWeather connected with Penn State and giving us an opportunity, to come out here and do a map discussion. So we really are happy that you have us here. As Ryan said, I'm a senior meteorologist, been forecasting operationally since the mid-'80s, so we've seen a lot of changes, in the operational field. What I want to talk about, at least to start the talk here, is we had a big temperature bust in the lower Rio Grande Valley this past winter. 24-hour forecasts out by the models were predicting temperatures that busted by 20 degrees or even greater, and it continued for like 2 days. I got a little brief case study here that may help anybody that has to forecast in the lower Rio Grande Valley. Anybody here do the forecast challenge? May have get Brownsville, Texas as one of your sites in the wintertime, so this might help you out. Let's find the slideshow here. Okay, to set the stage here, the busted forecast occurred on the 28th, which was a Saturday, and Sunday, March 1st. But this was the upper air pattern for 12Z to 28th. We had a broad, deep trough over the western United States and just a flat west-southwest flow across Mexico, Texas, and across the Gulf of Mexico. An Arctic high had pressed all the way down. Here's what's left of the Arctic boundary right here, south of Texas. And the Arctic high was tracking off to the east-northeast there with that fast jet flow. And this was the surface pattern of Saturday to 28th. We have an Arctic high over PA, and we have a broad east-northeast flow, a synoptic flow, and easterly flow across the Gulf of Mexico. Typically in Texas, once the high moves off the east coast, the return flow kicks in, and it warms up pretty quickly with the wind coming off the Gulf of Mexico, which is much warmer temperatures than the air that just settled in before that. But one thing we notice here, there's an inverted trough here, and the winds are out of the northwest in the lower Rio Grande Valley. So the question is how are the models going to handle something like that? Here's the this is an in-house product where we plot gridded data, and we have the GFS, the upper left, the Euro, and the upper right, and the NAM in the lower left. This is a 24-hour forecast, valid 12Z on the 28th of just the surface pressure. I think I got that analyzed possibly every 1 or 2 millibars. And so, GFS had a flat wave here, a little bump in the pressure field. The European, the NAM had a little more pronounced bump in the pressure field, and its trough was oriented more on north to south. This is what verified. That's the surface pressure, and that's the trough. So, looked like the GFS and the Euro were kind of pretty wimpy on the trough, and the NAM had a little better idea of the more of a north-south tilt. And here's about 12 hours later. GFS 36-hour forecast has the trough inland across the lower Rio Grande Valley, just a broad east-southeast flow. European, no different than that. The NAM had a sharper trough north of the lower Rio Grande Valley, but it also had more of a flat flow going in right to Brownsville into the lower Rio Grande Valley. Which, by the way, if anybody wants to know, there's about 3 counties down here: Brownsville, McAllen, Rio Grande City, South Padre Island. They consider that the lower Rio Grande Valley. Big agriculture, and a lot of people down there. Here's what verified the pressure field, and there's the pressure trough. So it verified a little further east and offshore. The NAM kind of had the best idea here. The European and the GFS were a little bit too flat. So what I did is I broke it down even more. I called up a South Texas map background, analyzed every 1 millibar, and did the same thing. This is the GFS in the upper left here. These are wind barbs here, all east-southeast flow. That's a warm flow coming right into the lower Rio Grande Valley. European model had somewhat of a double trough structure, had the east-southeast flow reaching the coast, and then a little northeast flow, which is not a real cold flow down there, and then kick to the northwest on the backside of the trough. The NAM, on the other hand, we got to tip our hat to the NAM at times. You got to know when to use a model. They all have their strengths. This had a pretty good northwest flow across the valley, and this is what verified 24-hour forecast here. So the NAM by far did a much better job with the surface depiction there, surface pressure troughs. This was a 36-hour forecast. The GFS, it's just warm air flooding into the valley here off the Gulf. European are pretty much the same. The trough that was near the coast shifted in a little more. The NAMBI still has a northwest flow into the valley. It still has that offshore pressure trough, and here's what verified over here on the right side. So, the NAM did a better job when you get down into the nitty-gritty, when you blow up the map and start plotting up with the smaller fields there. This was the max temperature forecast for Saturday. We got 60s over the over South Texas, some 60s and 70s over the lower Rio Grande Valley, and this is what verified. So this is what you call humiliation when you're in operational forecasting. We got 40s and low 50s. That's a 20 degree more bust. Now this data here was preload data. The forecasters will take a look at that and adjust it. We did make some adjustments on it. We didn't go far enough. Here's kind of a breakdown of the temperature forecast of the three models. This looks like the 10 Celsius line here for the GFS, 10 Celsius line, 15, 20, and the NAM had the 10 Celsius line tucked in closer to the coast, and this was the verification at 24 hours. So basically it's the same idea. The NAM did a better job. Same thing with 36-hour forecast. You got a plus 15 Celsius way up here deep into South Texas on the GFS and Euro. The NAM has that's a 15 Celsius, but this is the plus 10 on the NAM. It's way down south. It has the plus 15 offshore, and this is what verified. So after you get humiliated a couple of times, you learn how to read weather patterns, and it definitely helps you out. This pattern persisted for another day. This was the third day forecast, like a 48 to 60 hour forecast, based off the the 12Z models on the 27th. So we got 70s and some 80s down there. And by the way, some of this model data had the European model played a big role, like the 2-meter temperatures played a good bias into this data. So the European model is a good model, but it has its moments too. Here's what verified. 50s across much of South Texas, a few 60s in the lower Rio Grande Valley, and some 40s just south of Brownsville. So that's a key there. If you're ever forecasting in South Texas in the wintertime and an Arctic air mass, it has to be Arctic. If it's a Pacific high that builds in, this won't apply. It has to be a cold, dense air mass to get rooted down in there. And here's kind of a schematic that I developed here, just to explain what was going on. And here's our high moving off to the, in this case it was over PA, but you have a synoptic flow, you got coastal convergence. In here you got this cyclonic curvature along the coast. That in itself with the friction can tend to bend the wind a little to the left. You got a west-southwest flow aloft that would like to cause a lee side trough in here, but the cold air is in place, so it jumps offshore. And that's how you get a big bust in South Texas. So a couple pointers here just to quickly go through. Just beware of Arctic presses in the lower Rio Grande Valley. Now look at your upper air flow coming out of Mexico and Texas. If the cold air is in place, the upper trough is going to want to develop out over the warmer waters of the Gulf. That's one thing I forgot to mention. And you got these warm sea surface temperatures out here as well, and that just makes it even easier for that pressure trough to look for the path of least resistance. You can bust by 20 degrees, several days in a row here with this pattern. This is a notorious pattern for low clouds, drizzle, and really actually no chance for daytime heating when you get an Arctic press come down and intersected with a west-southwest flow aloft. You see a pattern like this, look, don't be afraid to look at the NAM. If it's the coldest MOS temperature, it probably will be the best choice. So one thing to keep in mind. And usually people try to warm it up too fast when this pattern sets up. And if there's an upper trough coming out of Mexico, you think, okay, the upper trough goes through South Texas, the clouds are going to break. It doesn't happen. It stays cloudy and crappy for at least another day, which can give you, an extra day of busting weather. So one of the pointers here is just to plot up. The high-res models seem to do better in this kind of a situation. In this case, it was the NAM, but probably the 4 kilometer would do a good job. And get the wind barbs on there too. That really helps you out. And another thing, in this climate we have in South Texas, everybody thinks it's always warmer at the coast than it is up in the valley. It only goes up maybe 100 feet or so in elevation, but the cold air drains right down to the coast, and with the northwest flow, it can be just as cold on the beach there as it is in the interior valley. So another thing to remember. So that's about what I have here for a little case study. Anybody have any questions about South Texas? Yes, Paul.
So the NAM did better than which other models?
The GFS and the European.
Okay. So why does that always seem to be the case there, or just in this particular day?
With this kind of situation, it will. Somebody said that the European model we have is not a real high resolution version of the European model.
So you think it's a resolution issue?
Yeah, I think it is a resolution. I mean, we see the cold air damming in the east, and the NAM seems to pick that up better than the other models. And it could be the same idea there with the resolution. Any other questions? Okay. All right, I guess we can talk about the local weather. That's not going to be fun. Let's see here. No, I woke up this morning and I saw some snow. Anybody else see snow today?
Oh, yeah.
What's today's date? The 23rd. Normal high is, I guess it's close to 60 or so. But it's
64, I think.
64? Okay. Yeah, this was kind of a slap in the face, kind of a day here. Just have to be patient for the rest of the month and things will start to improve. But here's a surface pattern from this morning. It's like a 970 low here, pretty deep low pressure center north of Quebec City, northwest flow across the Great Lakes into the northeast. Precipitation showing up here, depending on your elevation, sprinkles and flurries. Got a elongated high down across the middle of the country. Frontal zone offshore here, tracking across the southeast, across parts of East Texas and then back up into the plains. This seems to be the area where we have more thunderstorm activity. Ridge of high pressure aloft, kind of a humping high here that just kind of directs the jet stream over the top. So that's kind of where you're going to get a lot of your thunderstorm activity. Low pressure out west. There's a disturbance moving through the Pacific Northwest here. Let's see here. Let's get high pressure center here. All right. Look at some 500 millibar here. Got a cold core, deep low pressure center here over southeast Canada. That's responsible for the cold blast here into the northeast. We have a pretty broad trough out here over the southwest. Seeing a lot of these this winter. Water temperatures off Baja are much warmer than average. So we've had a lot of southern branch systems that have gone through the United States this winter, and it looks like this pattern is just continuing, right into the spring. Nice disturbance moving into western Canada here. So that's the way the upper air pattern is shaping up right now. And 300 millibars. You can see where the jet flow is. Pretty strong jet across Mexico and the southern United States. This trough here in the east has a nice jet, almost like a horseshoe jet around it. And so that tells me this trough is not going to be in a real big hurry to move. It looks like it could be locked in. This trough, however, out in the over to Baja has a pretty good jet max on the east side, so it's going to shear the trough out eastward. I'm not sure how strong the winds are out here, whether there's another shot of jet digging down in, but the modeling looks like it's going to be more progressive with that upper trough. So kind of a look here at the local radar. There's a nice band setting up just north of us, probably whitening the ground, especially in the higher terrain. So that's, I guess, if you're on Interstate 80, it would be kind of a bad travel there. Let's see. Look at the 4-kilometer wharf here. This shows some radar echoes coming into central PA this morning. A lot of low clouds. I did look at the 850 temperatures. They're -10s over Michigan, the -6s in Pittsburgh. So we're cold advecting with -7 or 8, probably at 850. A lot of low-level moisture. So this is no wonder we have the clouds and flurries. Probably be a few sprinkles and when we get a little heating. May even get to be a little convective this afternoon. We could have some graupel, possibly a good snow shower. As we get in through later tonight, the clouds dissipate, and then during the day tomorrow, we have more of a shift off to the northeast. More of a dry pattern moving in. We should see a little more in the way of sun tomorrow. This is the system that's going to threaten later Saturday, but will that stay to our south or not? Looks like a pretty good push eastward across the Ohio Valley, so I have to keep an eye on that as a possible rain event there. Now here's the animator on the pro site, and we can take a look at some surface features here. We got the European model on the top. It's the GFS underneath, and then the NAM underneath that as well. This is the 0Z run of the Euro, 6Z GFS, and 12Z NAM. So as we can see, we got our northwest flow. Interesting about the NAM, this is 2 p.m. There's a lot of radar on showing up, but it's showing pretty much dry over Pennsylvania. So you gotta look at the surface ops to verify what's going on. And this is a perfect case. That's the GFS around 2 o'clock, and the Euro both have a lot more in the way of low-level moisture here. Tonight's going to be a cold night. Probably be a freeze in some valley areas. Could be a few lingering flurries this evening in the higher terrain up north. During the day tomorrow, high pressure starts to slide in from the west. The thicknesses start to warm, so we're going to have somewhat of a better day tomorrow. Still probably be enough low-level moisture for some cumulus clouds and maybe some broken deck clouds, but it's still going to be on the chilly side. Then as we head toward Saturday, here comes the storm center that's associated with that big trough out over Baja. That moves through the middle of the country, and as it tracks eastward, it kind of hits a wall here and starts to belly underneath. So that was the European model there for Saturday, right here, going into Sunday morning. And this is the GFS Saturday. Moisture gets a little closer to central Pennsylvania here by later in the day, and then it kind of weakens and shifts eastward and stays to the south on Sunday. The new NAM moisture stays farther to the south here. One thing we notice about the NAM, when there's warm advection, it's a dry model, and it will has a tendency to be a little dry on the front end, so you got to keep that in mind. But it also takes the bulk of the moisture to the south of central Pennsylvania. So Saturday, later in the day, probably Saturday night, there's potential here to get some clouds and maybe some wet weather. The overall pattern, though, one thing I wanted to point out here, by the way, if anybody has any questions, just chime right in. That's no problem. Let's see here. This is the North Atlantic Oscillation, and right now it's going into a negative mode, which suggests there's a blocking. We see up the heights are high over Greenland and parts of eastern Canada, and a big trough over the northeastern U.S. And as we see the NAO's forecast to continue to deepen and then slowly pull out as we head toward the early part of May. So with the NAO in a negative mode, this storm coming from the west will have a tendency to kind of slide underneath. That's a notorious track for systems when we have a strong negative NAO. So that favors that the bulk of the precip would probably stay south of central Pennsylvania. We'll have to see about that. So looking beyond, this is this doesn't look good here. Sunday, oh wait, the softball game Sunday. Let's see, what do we got here? Looks like it's going to be dry and on the cool side, so better dress warm. This is the European model from yesterday, 0Z last night. It has the 540 line dipping pretty far south, so it's going to continue to be cool no matter how you look at it for Sunday. And then looking beyond that, it looks like the vortex itself kind of dumbbells southward. So there may be a kind of a brief break from precipitation, but it could come sliding right back in from the north as we get into early next week. As vorticity dumbbells around this upper level low. So it's trapped by the negative NAO there. So Monday looks unsettled. Probably be some flurries around again. And then we keep on rolling. Tuesday, maybe we have some high pressure building in, but the thicknesses are still pretty low on Tuesday. I would think it's going to stay cool, well, definitely below normal. And then as we get into midweek, things start to open up a little bit. This next storm center here, there's been a lot of different takes with this feature, the one that's over the southern plains, lower Mississippi Valley. I think a few days ago, the European model had it going up and producing a big snowstorm or a big storm in the northeast, but now it looks like it's getting pushed farther to the south, probably due to the negative NAO. This is the GFS model, still tries to bring it up by Thursday. So that's one thing we'll be looking at next week. What happens to one of these southern branch systems. If the NAO remains as strong as it's forecast to be, chances are, it'll pass by to our south. But, we didn't get the negative NAO for practically the whole winter. The systems, anytime they wanted to, they came up from the south. But now we finally got into this pattern, and it has a different effect on the track of the storms. So that's what we have for the local forecast. We can get into some ensemble plumes here. This is the GEFS, the GFS ensemble from the 60 run last night. We still have these days below freezing here at night, tonight, and again for tomorrow night. And then we see a little build up in temperature. Let's see, this Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now Saturday it has us getting up maybe to 55, so maybe get lucky to. And then we kind of stable off here as the more energy swings around from the upper level low. It kind of keeps us below average here as we head through the weekend or into the middle part of next week. So what we see is what we get as far as temperatures. I don't see any warming, probably for the next week or so. Even into the early part of May. We're probably going to continue to have somewhat of a low height pattern in the northeast, but things, when we look down the road, we see more of a change. I think I have some maps here in the PowerPoint. Some long-range maps here give us some hope. This is the pattern for the what we think is going to happen for late April. I mean, we're already in it right now. It's not going to change much. A lot of the modeling agrees with that. We think that'll last into the first part of May, but this is the European model. This is the control run, which goes out to 15 days. And what I did was I took the 5-day mean, running 5-day mean at 500 millibars. So you can see we got a ridge of, or at least a positive height anomaly into the Great Lakes into the east here. So we should see improvement with temperatures rebounding after a few days, when we get through a few days of May. And
do the ensembles agree with that as well?
Yeah, I got a GFS ensemble here too. That's the GEFS ensemble, valid pretty much the same time. It's not as bullish is not as far east with the upper height anomaly. It still has those low heights, over Atlantic Canada. So it could be a kind of a struggle there.
Those are both good tornado patterns for the high plains.
Uh-oh.
Good dry line storm.
Okay. Well, I guess that means it's going to be better here, I hope.
Yep, it'll be warmer here
Yeah.
if that happens.
Okay. All right. Speaking of severe weather, I did have a couple slides here. This is SPC's. This is what they're forecasting for today into tonight. We got some eastern Colorado, western portions of Kansas, some development, and you can see kind of track right along where the boundary is. Even have a little bit off the west coast or the east-southeast part of Florida. The mean flows out of the west, so as storms roll across the state, they pick up more energy, and they could get areas like West Palm Beach and Miami. This is the AccuWeather thinking here for at least this like later today into tonight. So we're kind of thinking the same idea here in the eastern Colorado, western Kansas, and across the Red River of Texas into central Texas. SPC, let me see something. There we go. That's their tomorrow and tomorrow night as that big storm comes out of the southwest. One thing I did notice that the surface pressures were, I think, below 1,000 millibars as this low pressure center comes out into the plains. So that's a pretty low pressure to have. You know, it's an energetic system. A lot of moisture coming up. There'll be probably a lot of directional shear in the low levels. Definitely some strong winds aloft. So we got some enhancement here in eastern Texas and also in parts of eastern Kansas. Low pressure is going to roll up into here. They'll be near the warm front. So that can add a little more helicity to the potential there for eastern Kansas. You know, as that get up into parts of Kansas City, it's possible. This is what AccuWeather's thinking for Friday afternoon, Friday evening. Pretty similar. They have their enhancement in here in East Texas. Interesting to see how far west. There's been a lot of discussion in the office of where are we going to start these thunderstorms at. I mean, the dry line has more of a punch into the northeast and then tails back more to the southwest. So we have actually shifted, you know, the back edge here a little, at least farther westward toward the dry line convergence area. So, and let's see. So that's about all I have right now. Anybody have any questions or comments? Yes.
Yeah, I'm working evenings through Monday night. The weather's here. One thing we'll have to deal with tonight and tomorrow night. Some areas is frost freeze,
Right.
advisories in the mornings. Other thing that's interesting is being from western New York along the lake shore, this is much cloudier and much more widespread shower activity yesterday, snow flurries today, snow showers. And I'm even used to being up from western New York.
Yeah.
It's just cloudier than you expect. The lakes are cool.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I know my sister-in-law was happy when it warmed up. She's in Rochester, and they had accidents in Rochester. You know, snow on the roads this morning, and it's yeah. Oh, that's another thing I wanted to show. That brings me up to a good point there. I did put a map on. Yeah, this is it here. This is the 500 millibar departures, anomalies. I mean, you're talking 3 standard deviations below average here. I think that's, you know, that definitely helps to explain why we have so much clouds. There's just so much cold air aloft. This system out here has a pretty low standard deviation as well. So there's definitely some energy that, you know, that's going to come out into the plains and possibly help produce severe weather. We see a lot of bowling balls here. Cue balls or bowling balls. Some people call that a Van Gundy pattern. Anybody here ever hear of Van Gundy pattern? You ever hear of an old basketball coach, Jeff Van Gundy?
Yeah.
He used to coach the Knicks. Well, if you look at the guy, it looks like he never slept for like months. He's got like 2 cut off lows over his eyes, so we call it Van Gundy. So if you ever hear of Van Gundy, you'll know where that comes from. I don't know if he knows about it though.
I have a quick question. Anybody
Yes.
can comment on this. What were your thoughts on the thunderstorm we had here on Monday? I mean, I'm not really here in the summertime, so I don't know
Oh,
what a
man.
good thunderstorm here is, but I thought that was pretty.
It was exhilarating,
Yeah.
you know, for State College. I mean, I was out on my porch just loving every minute of it. You know, I had two hail events. One was like one was pea size, the first one, and then the second one was nickel size. And just to hear the noise on the awning and everything, it's something that I probably, you know, you don't hear too much around here. That was an interesting pattern. There was a deep low pressure center, if I'm not mistaken, went up through the lakes. And I mean, there was just a lot of energy associated with that.
Yeah, I think we're lucky it hadn't heated up more than it did.
Right.
Might have been some stable air at low levels. We did a survey west of Harrisburg yesterday, you found more tornadoes.
There was or wasn't? Wasn't. Okay. I saw some video of the you know, the severe supercell. You know, somebody showed down there. I think it was near Lancaster or so.
Yeah, it was a good video.
Yep. Yeah, that was very impressive.
I was at Lowe's waiting in the parking lot for my wife. It's a long duration hail.
Yeah.
It was like 20 minutes of hail. 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's another thing. The wind was blowing and the hail. I guess a severe wind hailstorm, you have to have certain size hail, you know, to be considered an SWD. We didn't have the hail size, but boy, we had the extended wind and the hail, but it was small. I guess there were some reports of little dings on people's cars. You know, some people did have 1-inch hail. So.
I haven't seen mine. I gotta check mine. Thanks, Bob. Next week is our last briefing, and Rich Grum will be here from the Weather Service. It'd be nice to have a good turnout, so hope to see you then. And we hope to have you back in the fall, too. Thanks,
Pleasure.
Bob. Appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody. No, that was great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for calling in.